All right, with us now from Benghazi, Libya, we're going to go to NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel with how the story is playing out there. Richard.
Good morning. This is an incredible story that is playing out across the Middle East. People are celebrating this as world reaction is pouring in. Statements from European leaders, even from the Vatican, saying that this is a welcome act, considering Osama bin Laden used religion to sow hatred and divisions among people. It is getting coverage across the Arab world, and so far, no public calls of sympathy, just condemnation for bin Laden and hope that this will be the end. Condemnation coming from Pakistan, Afghanistan, even Yemen, which is bin Laden's ancestral homeland. A Yemeni official saying they hope there will be more targeted attacks against al-Qaeda leaders.
And Richard, one of the obvious concerns will be a backlash, a response to this that is violent. What are you hearing in your circles about this?
Jihadi groups on websites in particular are already suggesting that they will carry out some sort of retribution. And in the short term, it is very likely you will see some militant groups calling out to carry out attacks to try and assert their authority, to try and assert their independence from the al-Qaeda franchise. There have already been warning statements issued by embassies. I saw one hit my inbox this morning from the embassy in Lebanon, calling on American citizens to be vigilant in case there are any kind of terrorist acts in retribution or to capitalize on this moment. But it is certainly a blow to militants. Militants a few years ago used to like to rub it in the nose of U.S. officials that Osama bin Laden had not been caught. Every day that he was alive was a victory for them, and they can no longer claim that.
All right, Richard Engel in Libya, thank you so much for being with us. Security's been stepped up in New York. And nobody knows that better than Mike Barnicle, who every Sunday night, he comes in from Boston. Every Sunday night, he stumbles into Times Square.
Right, likes to sit there for a while and look at people.
Just hang out. He did it again last night, but Mike, it was a little different last night when you stumbled into Times Square after midnight.
It was, Joe. It was actually about 1:30, 1:45 this morning. There wasn't a huge crowd. Perhaps 400, 500 people gathered, horns beeping, passing cars. I am not embarrassed to tell you that I had goosebumps and tears in my eyes as a fire truck roared through Times Square with the flags on the bumpers flapping in the breeze in this cocoon of neon and noise that Times Square is. And this is one of the things this is, obviously, we know. Osama bin Laden is dead. The other thing is this is an adrenaline shot for America that has been long overdue. We've been sullied by our economy. We've been battered by our irrelevant politics, by the noise of the ideology and the polarization of our politics. And yet this somehow energized so many people around the world last night, but especially here in this country.
Well, I'll tell you, on the local NBC affiliate, at some point, I guess it was midnight, they broke away from NBC News coverage and did the local coverage. And I was about to change the channel because I wanted to get the national feed, but they went immediately to ground zero. And, Mike, I heard the chants of USA going up there. This is a place that, my God, for New Yorkers, Mika, you lived down there for weeks after 9/11. You ran down there. It profoundly affected the lives of so many around you and so many New Yorkers. But Mike, my God, hearing those chants go up easily for the first time in almost a decade down there was I just got chills.
You know, it's funny the way the mind works, but one of the people among many that I've been thinking of, I'm sure many people think of those whose lives were changed forever, which is all of our lives in September 11th. But young 29-year-old Lieutenant Michael Murphy, a Navy SEAL from Patchogue, Long Island, who was killed in Afghanistan in June of 2005. He's a Medal of Honor recipient, and I think no doubt his Navy SEAL team was in the Hindu Kush Mountains looking for Osama bin Laden. So we should think of him and all of the others who have lost their lives and whose families have been wounded here at home due to that loss as a result of these wars.
We were showing the shots of Ground Zero and the celebrations there, which was a place of such devastation and such loss on 9/11. And the first thing I thought of when I heard about this is the most vivid memory of covering that story, which is walking around that area of the city where everyone was walking around with pictures of their family members, saying, can you help me find my sister? Can you help me find my mother? Can you help me find my son? Hoping that in some way, even though these people had been obliterated off the face of the earth, that maybe in some way they were somewhere, and they never got anything. They never got anything. And maybe this is something.
They had no closure right afterwards, obviously, for those terrible, tragic reasons. And Willie, even in the search for Osama bin Laden over the past decade, it's been a cruel time for them, where we were so close at one point in Tora Bora, and then we heard politicians saying, oh, we're close to getting him. I remember reading that in 2003, 2004, 2005. But again, a little closure last night for the families of, who lost loved ones on 9/11.
For a lot of people, the families, but also people perhaps in government, this had become a lost dream or a lost cause. Almost 10 years later, the fact that we hadn't found him, you kind of put it on the back burner and said, okay, he's either been killed somewhere or we're never going to find the guy. So this is temporary, as Mike said, a shot in the arm. It feels good right now, though. I think of families in my town of Ridgewood, New Jersey, 12 families who lost dads and kids and lost moms, and there's a train station in Ridgewood where the guys who work in the city would go, park their cars, get on the train, and go down to Wall Street. And a lot of those cars just sat there for several days on September 11th. Nobody returned to the cars, so I hope my friends and neighbors get a little comfort in this today.
Some closure. And Richard Haas, the implications as we move forward, obviously, this is, as Willie said, and as we've all said, this is not the end of any war on terror or against terror, or whatever you want to call it. And it actually causes some great complications for Hillary Clinton, the State Department, President Barack Obama. Pakistan was, we have been saying over the past decade, the most important country in this war and the most dangerous country. And there's no doubt they let U.S. foreign policy makers down terribly in this episode.